Good morning. Thanks for joining. My name's Ken Charman. I'm the CEO of a Unilever spin-out company. And today we are going to be looking at how we unify the distributed workforce. And I'm going to go through that in a case study type format. So it's based on the real world. It's not theoretical. This is direct from practice. It's what we're working with now. And I'd like to introduce it by saying if we hadn't been able to achieve this, we wouldn't have the product that we have now taken to market in a new company. So what is that product? The product is a total digital reward platform, and it's a new class of product. It's something that's never been done before, and it manages Unilever's considerable investment in reward. Unilever spends about $6 billion a year rewarding its 130,000 employees who are based in over 100 countries. And that's a complex thing to keep control of or to keep sight of, because the way reward is managed is divided across many different systems. So payroll takes care of salary and bonus, pension, there are multiple systems, benefits, flexible benefits, health benefits, many other benefits are also catered for in different systems, and share purchase and share allocations are too. And these systems have to deal with local tax, local regulations, and it's very difficult to unify those systems. So in 2011, Unilever, in the absence of being able to find a product which could bring all that data together in one place, commissioned the design and build of a system which digitized that, brought it all together. So a consolidation system that took data from many different systems, converted it, translated it, put it into one database that we could then apply reward policies to. And once we'd got that completed, then there were many different business applications relating to reward that we could build on top of that system. From total reward statements that employees can look up their own reward details on, to workforce planning applications, to applications which benchmark Unilever's pay against local jobs and local market positions. Everything that Unilever now does with reward is based on this single source of data, which is updated on a daily basis and is in effect a real-time system. So that was a bit of a tall order, actually, a very difficult system to produce, extremely complex. So we managed to build that, and we built that over a number of years, 6 or 7 years of development up until 2017, with big meaty chunks of new applications coming out every year. And actually in 2017, we took a decision to take the product to market. So this has been a big success story in terms of developing complex IT, and I'm going to talk to you about how we did that via this distributed workforce. Now, students of economics will immediately recognize Ron on the right there as the author of the Nobel Prize winning work, The Nature of the Firm. And we distribute work around the organization because we're not superhuman, so one person can't do everything. So we divide and we specialize. So we're looking for expertise. We want to push work out to the people who are best able to produce it. When we're looking at complex work and we have to involve lots of people, we bring in resource as we need it, but we don't want that resource to be sitting there doing nothing when we don't need it. So we distribute work because we want high levels of utilization. Work comes in ebbs and flows, so we want capacity that we can turn on and off when we want to. Sometimes we need a surge with hundreds of people working on the system. Other times we don't need so many, so that will be useful then to distribute work out to organizations which have that ability to rise and fall with our demand. And increasingly, we use wage arbitrage in a global economy to source work to where it can be done the most cost effectively. Nature of the firm is the theory that wrote that up, and increasingly now we source work out not just internally in the organization, but outside of the organization too. The design for our business is, as we see here at the top of a pyramid, is Unilever, who supply the vision, the business requirement, the expert practitioner knowledge, but then beneath it is our distributed workforce. uFlexReward is the middle of the triangle there, and we are the asset manager. We take the product to market, we commission work from other sources, we monitor and maintain and spend using Unilever's money wisely and grow value in the business. The bulk of our work is done by the delivery partner, a development partner, an external software development company who take our business requirements, turn it into designs, code it up, provide the technical architecture, the infrastructure, security, compliance, and lots of things where deep technical expertise is required, and they use an agile methodology. And then implementing big enterprise systems is something that we would commission to external suppliers as well. Generally, on a scale of product like this, which is a global product, it will be professional services organizations who have the global reach, so that would be Big Four. So that's a pictorial view of our current distributed workforce. And it's global, because these days technology means that there's no friction applying to distance really, so we can source our work from anywhere in the world where we believe we're going to get the best satisfaction of the business need. On this project, then that means in the early days in 2011, we divided across 7 or 8 countries with experts in Unilever and in our original software development supplier, providing their knowledge in support of the system, divided by function. And as you can see there, we face the same challenges that everybody does. So distance, geographical distance, we lose energy as we negotiate with people. It creates problems as we move across departmental and organizational boundaries. There's still a language barrier. We have cultural misunderstandings. We get lots of nuance because we're not in the room with people. We don't have control over a resource, not full control over a resource that we buy in. We can't be certain that our priorities are their priorities. We don't run their incentive schemes. We don't do their performance management. We're not in charge of their training and development. We can't tell them what their leadership style should be. They may use different planning and management methodology. They might even set their people impossible deadlines and not supply them sufficient resource to do the work that we want them to do. They may be poorly motivated. They might not care about the physical and well-being, mental well-being of their workforce in the way that we do. And all of this sets up potential for conflicts. There's cost and speed conflict. Suppliers might well try to land and expand as we deal with the distributed workforce. We are all tribal, so where does our tribal loyalty belong to? The project, our employer, our professional peer group. Within teams, we've got rivalries, jealousies, biases. There's a whole bunch of things which can get between us and our objectives. And if we've distributed the workforce and we don't have an intimate day-to-day knowledge or physical proximity with them, it's harder to manage those things. But we manage them, and we manage them using what I would describe as normative techniques. So these are quantitative methods in which we set plans, we define contracts, we adopt a project management methodology, and then we gauge performance by through reports along the way of the project management, progress on the project. We subject people to change control. So to protect ourselves, we set rules around whether you can change the order of things, whether you can change the specification of things, and those rules are bureaucratically controlled with approval levels. We have meetings, of course we have meetings to keep everybody in the project up to date. We supervise, we meter people on projects in many ways, but on projects especially we tend to meter by the unit of time, and we measure progress and we review. We hold frequent reviews. So in order to have effective management of a distributed workforce and take advantage of that global reach and the expertise that lies in different organizations, we put these management and control methodologies on top of the project. And of course, in the modern world, we've got many great collaboration tools, which means that actually the friction of time and distance is dealt with. And we've got lots of these tools. So on this project these days, we're using Microsoft Teams, we use the Atlassian toolset, so we've got Confluence, Jira, WhatsApp, Slack, email, phones. We've got no end of technology which allows us to feel that we are collaborating very closely as a team, as a distributed workforce, with people who are thousands of miles away, or thousands of miles separation between them, with time zones not really an issue when we hold meetings because we take it in turns to stay up late at night or get up early in the morning. So technology has done a great job of allowing us to function as a distributed workforce with an illusion of intimacy and being close together. But this isn't about how we unify teams with technology, and to my mind, the technology is a sideshow. It's something which we now take for granted, and it isn't the subject of unifying project teams. It's a solution, and the way we communicate is, to a large extent, taken for granted now. Let's talk about some of the things that we do to prevent collaboration. And these are the things that organizations do when they are engaged in high-risk activity with their distributed workforces, external organizations, maybe even between departments, where there's a risk that on delivery, then contracts and agreements are put in place to underwrite that risk. And on the case study we're going through now, the original contracts were pretty good on their insurance policies. So the contract was signed to a fixed specification with a fixed price and a fixed delivery date with milestone payments for deliverables. So the commissioner, Unilever, was protected from unforeseen events. And that actually put a lot of pressure on the team, the delivery teams, who were largely external to the organisation, but also internal teams within Unilever who were working to these specifications as well. And what we're going to look at now is how that revealed to us the things that we actually needed to do in order to build a unified project team. And it wasn't something which we predicted in advance. So actually, the gun went off. In 2011, 12 months into the project, the first release of the system was a good release. It delivered fantastic value, fantastic functionality, but there had been tensions in the project, for nobody's fault, was more complex than originally envisaged. We were doing something that had never been done before. So that fixed price, fixed delivery milestone created a tension which caused a distress within the project. So the teams worked very, very hard, produced a good outcome, but it was obvious that we couldn't carry on working in that way. We had years of development ahead of us, and the first phase of development encountered this traumatic event So we had to do something in order to solve that. And within this story, that's where I arrived. I know I sound young, but actually I'm 63, and I've done lots of really big IT projects, and I was brought in to review the project and make some suggestions about how we could improve output and improve forecasting and predictability on the system. And I must admit, when I come into a project with a widely, globally dispersed team, there's a temptation to prejudge what you're going to see, and I was ready for the fact that there was friction between the teams, the channels of communication weren't good enough, and I was waiting to hear everybody blame each other, and to hear about lack of communication, lack of effective management, lack of all the usual things that can happen when a project has a setback. So I didn't have very long. I had a couple of weeks. I interviewed lots of people, gave them the protection of anonymity, and was waiting for the finger pointing to begin. But weirdly, it didn't. And in fact, what I discovered here was a really highly motivated bunch of people from different organizations, from different countries, from different cultures, who were really identifying with their mission. So I sat back and listened to this and put my prejudgments to one side, and that plan I had to suggest that we really tightened up project management, and we really tightened up change control, and we tightened up the approval and authority process. I threw that in the bin and followed what was intuitively an asset of this project. It was a really unified distributed workforce. So actually, instead of tightening up, what I did was loosen things. And the 4 slides you can see on the right-hand side of that screen are explained in greater detail later on. But this was the formula that we put to the project and was largely adopted. Let me go back to that. So we moved from, in terms of project management, we moved into what I would describe as a social enterprise, away from a project machine. We recognized that success in this project was coming from the social interaction between the individuals and teams. Project management methodology, those quantitative, normative documents and controls were useful, but we started to look upon them as tools and not rules, and we didn't allow our lives to be dictated by them. We formally adopted Agile. We were running Agile in a kind of shadow ad hoc way, but now on this project, Agile is something we live and breathe, but a few years ago, it wasn't the norm, it wasn't popular, so we moved into an Agile way of working, I think, early. We moved away from fixed targets and we adopted spreads. So we worked with spreads of dates, we worked with spreads of budgets, and also specifications. And then as the project unfolded, we narrowed the spread. So we took that pressure off the distributed team by giving them the chance to, and that pressure comes from when you make targets in your maximum state of ignorance, which is the beginning of a big chunk of work, especially if you're working on something as a team where you need to work with imagination and creativity to solve problems that have never been tackled before. So we kind of trusted the team. We trusted the team, different departments, different organizations, and we gave them the leeway to work between boundaries of spreads. And what we discovered after that was actually the forecasting accuracy became much more reliable, much more predictable, without that really high stakes fixed component in forecasting. We pushed on collaboration. I was not a Unilever person or an employee of the supplier. I was an independent chair of the project, and I stayed on in that role. So we used a kind of mediation force between the commissioner and the teams who were delivering the work. So we tried to head off problems before they arrived. We moved away from metering, or rather fixed delivery milestone payments onto a retainer basis, so pay as you go, but to honest forecasts. We blended the project organizations. We had a combined project board. We adopted something called Relational Contracting, where we had open variation to terms. So if you like, that's an open change order, which the team could agree locally on the ground without going through bureaucratic approval processes. And then we did all that high performance team stuff as well. So we made sure that people were working in small teams, less hierarchy. They identified with the strategic mission. They were encouraged to be highly collaborative. We devolved decision-making and authority. There were strong levels of trust. We had democratic and open feedback. We tried new ideas. We were prepared to make mistakes. We did a lot of things which go counter to the normative way of running projects. This is a list of things which expand on what I would call that kind of fluffy stuff which I've just been describing, but actually made the difference. I'm going to pick out some of these. I'm not going to go through them all in detail, but some of them were, some of the terminology here is very familiar, and if you're interested in the psychology of teams, then I'm sure you would have come across many of the items on this, but I'm going to focus in on a couple. Presumed authority was a bit of a breakthrough and goes counter to big company culture. And presumed authority tackled one of the big causes of delays that you get in distributed workforces. So if I need a decision on something and I'm working in one location and somebody doesn't answer the phone or doesn't respond to their email, I can walk down the corridor and knock on their door. I can go and see them, and I get my decision. If decisions have to be taken by meetings, we have delays because we have problems with busy people all coinciding in the same place at the same time. And these delays degrade the quality of work. They degrade the productivity and output of teams. And that is magnified by distance. So if we distribute work around different locations, this ability to get a decision made is harder. It's harder to take action to resolve something where you need a decision in order for work to progress. So in the spirit of empowerment and in the spirit of trusting our experts who we buy in and who we commission work to, we move to a basis of presumed authority. This gives the power to the workforce to make a decision if they haven't been able to get to the person who holds authority to give approval for that decision. So we trust people to know their subject and take decisions in the best interest of the project because we've made such an investment in the social enterprise and getting everybody to identify with the tribe of the mission, the tribe of the project. We trust them to take decisions which are in the best interest of the combined output of the team. It requires investment to get to that point, but as long as you've got that culture in place, then why shouldn't you trust? So presumed authority gives our teams the power to go ahead and do something and explain what they did afterwards. Generally, I won't say without exception, but they choose what we would have chosen. They choose what we would have approved. In fact, if you've got the right team, you've made the right selections, they're familiar with their terrain, they're going to take the decision anyway. So giving that approval up front, giving that license up front was a great way to improve the speed of output, but also boost the confidence and status of people who are involved in the project. So it became a way of working. I mentioned a couple of books here on this screen, because in order to build up that kind of team culture, we did, across wide geographies, we did have a book group running, a book club running, in which we read books and then which were relevant to the project, and then discuss them. And there's two that I would single out, or well, single's the wrong word if there's two, I know that. I can't think there's a better one. Anyway, two things here, two books. It's Your Ship is a book by an American Navy commander who inherited the worst ship in the US Navy in terms of its performance. I think there's about 200 ships, and this was at the bottom of the performance ladder. And through empowering his ship's company, he turned it round to be the top performing ship in less than 12 months. And his management techniques were in the spirit of our project of empowering people, trusting people, giving them authority. And it's a book that can be read in an evening and backs up the message we were trying to put across. And then Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner of experimental psychology, his book Thinking Fast and Slow was another one which got us all thinking. So I spent a lot of time on this slide, and what you're looking at here does seem to be things which I couldn't back up with truth and evidence. It's referring to things where actually personal experience, you need to be there to see it, is the form of evidence. And I don't shy away from that. I don't apologize for that. But as we'll see in a moment, it is based on grounded theory. It is based on research, and we'll come on to that in a moment. I just want to make one more point about leadership. So we're unifying the project team, but all teams have a command structure. And although we're very keen on having a flat organization structure and being non-hierarchical, we still need leaders. But we're also very keen on the theory of servant leadership. So this is written up by the Greenleaf organization. And basically, if you're a servant leader, you are kind of leading from behind. We don't want stars. We don't want people who are arrogant, who think they know the answer to everything, not at any level in our project. We want people who are considerate, supportive, who use their knowledge and expertise to support their team and who provide their team with protection and guidance. And this is a theory which is well written up, well served, and I would recommend anybody to take a look at that if you're interested in the theory of leadership. So servant leadership, if you've not come across before, hopefully you have, is something which you could put to good advantage when you're working with these teams which are distributed around different locations. Okay, I'm going to talk now about who those academic theorists are who gave us the grounded, research-based evidence that sits behind this this approach, this very humanist approach we're taking to our project. Ronald Coase, we've already mentioned, with transaction cost theory. I'm not going to talk about specificity or bounded rationality. These are also Nobel Prize winning theories from economics. I'm going to jump to relational contracts, and this is a theory put forward by a Harvard Law School professor of the name of McNeil, who actually was the head of a Scottish tribal clan, but became a famous lawyer. And I think his knowledge of how the clan worked had an influence on the way he described contracts actually working. So let's have a look at what he thinks really happens with contracts. So if you understand contract theory, you know that a contract is actually an exchange of promises. I exchange the promise to pay you money in return for things that you deliver, your labour, your knowledge, or products. And in order to make sure that that there are not false promises, we have contracts in place, and if people step outside the contract, if there's a breach, then we've got recourse to take action. And that has made, especially in global business, especially with legal practice becoming so prominent, that's made the world of contract, the world of distributed work, adversarial. So if you, and because of the nature of risk in these projects, then there is a division between client and supplier, even in an internal contractual exchange. And McNeil observes that although there is a contract there, what normally happens when we're in the execution of a contract is we forget about it. We put it to one side and get on with getting the job done. And I've listed here in these bullet points things that McNeil says are the things that actually make a contract effective, rather than the things which are in the contract. And this is what we encourage. We encourage our teams to identify with the project. It doesn't mean that they're being disloyal to their direct employer. They're not being disloyal to their professional peers. They are identifying with the purpose of the activity, the mission that we're all engaged upon. And for that to happen, you have higher degrees of trust. You have to be honest with each other. There has to be mutuality. You have to give and take. You have to support each other. You've got to be flexible. You've got to be forgiving. So McNeil, who was a hard-bitten Scottish lawyer, actually saw these soft human factors being the driving force behind contracts. So the soft and fluffy stuff I talked about before is actually backed up by legal theory. And relational contracting has been behind some very big contracts. Terminal 5 at Heathrow was a relational contract basis with much higher degrees of openness and trust than you would normally encounter. So it's great, and that's what led to 6 years of success on this project. From moving into this way in which we worked as a unified team, we just kept delivering, and everybody was happy. Forecasting was accurate, budgets were managed well, delivery came in on time, and the quality of delivery was high. This was a reliable system, and noted for the fact that it gave practitioners, the users, what they wanted. So 6 years of happiness followed that slight setback in year one, once we established this highly effective, highly unified distributed team. And then in 2017, we had another unpredicted setback. So what happened then was the partner that we were working with was acquired, and the new owners decided they didn't want to continue with this form of business, with this form of software development. So we had 18 months in which, an 18-month period in which we had to completely rebuild the system, which took us 6 years to build, and with a new partner. It wasn't our distributed workforce, it belonged to somebody else, so it could be taken away. So that was the challenge we faced in 2017. So there was no other product available in the market to do this, so it was a case of having to build it again. And we took stock. This is a very high-profile system within Unilever. It is looking after $6 billion a year of spend. About 15 to 20% of company spending is managed by this system. And everybody has an opinion on reward. Nobody goes to work without being paid. So from the CEO to somebody picking tea, everybody's got an opinion on the subject. So as about a high profile as you could get. And things had happened in that 6 years on the employment landscape. There was businesses were encouraged more and more to focus on core. So big global multinationals actually had shrinking workforces, even though their output was increasing, as they focused on their core knowledge, their core skills. Globalization was increasing, so access to a global workforce and global expertise was becoming more prominent. There's a growth of contingent labor. That is labor that is almost working for you as a full-time employee, but actually isn't. And in fact, on this project, up until April this year, from 2011 until April this year, I was a contingent labor person myself. So I was an external advisor to Unilever. And contingent labor is now, in some organizations, some tech organizations, that contract contingent labor is 30, 40, 50% of the workforce. And there was a big expansion of outsourcing and offshoring. So when we looked for a new supplier, we had to take account of that. We were asked by the C-level, the top people at Unilever, to conduct a go-to-market study on what should happen here. And the fact that this was such an important business need and there were no other products in the market that could satisfy it, encouraged Unilever to think expansively and think in terms of, well, why don't we, if we're going to redevelop this, why don't we explore the idea that other companies might like to buy it too? So we were asked to look into the market viability of building a product to a standard and a design which could be used by others. And that's where we came up with this design for the distributed workforce, which I described at the beginning of the presentation. And that's where we sit now. Our team consists of a small number of visionaries, senior business professionals, executives from Unilever who supply us with the deep knowledge of the future of work and the future of reward. We have access to the whole of Unilever's HR and reward expertise, but actually working closely in our project, there's probably only a couple of people from Unilever who are pushing the ideas into the machine, which we then turn into a product. uFlexReward has just 10 employees. These are direct reports to me. That's the team that manages all of the other work and takes the product to market. Our development function can go up and down in size. It can be as many as 100 people working in parallel development channels. It can reduce down if the requirement for new functionality is lower, but given the fact that we had to rebuild 6 years of functionality in 18 months, we haven't really noticed much tailing off in the requirement for developers. And then implementation is done on a contract basis to outsiders. That's the core team. And if we imagine a distributed workforce being at its core people who work 100% of their time on the project, then that's it. But if we go to another layer out in the onion and further layers out, then actually the users and the number of people, number of functions who are involved in this project expands. So 100-odd people who are the core producers, but many other people who are stakeholders, users, testers, contributors to the project. How did we select a supplier knowing that so much of the success of what we do is dependent on that high level of unity within the distributed workforce? How do you find one of those? And how do you do it in a short space of time? Well, this is what we went through. We in the August, we put a spec together We looked at 25 potential suppliers in September and October. We reduced it to 8 who all came along and gave us a pitch, and then we reduced it to 3 in November and December. And those 3, we set a challenge to work with us for 2 months in 3 sprints, 3 development sprints, so that we could see how they worked. So we co-funded that with them. So we took 3 suppliers through a process where we were working with them on a daily basis to observe their project culture, their business culture, to observe whether they could work to that high standard of unity that we wanted from a supplier. And in the January, we made our selection. In the February, we started the project, and 10 months later, in December, we had to go live to the HR and reward function in Unilever, having rebuilt what was 6 years of functionality. That was the supplier selection process. So how did we do it? Well, we observed the way these companies performed in an agile development environment. There's plenty of choice of that these days. In fact, it's almost becoming the standard way of working. But when we were working with them on a daily basis and visiting their locations and working with them as a team, we were looking for other things. We were looking for those soft factors that I've mentioned before, which we place such stock in terms of building that sense of common purpose and unity. We wanted to, it was hard when they're working with that degree of concentration with you. It would be hard for them to conceal or deceive or mislead or misrepresent. So we were looking for openness, honesty, respect being showed within their teams as well as to us. We wanted named individuals. We want specific people to be working on our project. We're not keen on the taxi rank view of being able to move people in and out of a project because the theory is they've got similar levels of competency. Our view is that they build up specific knowledge, so we wanted named individuals and we wanted to keep them. We wanted to see that they had a flat structure with very few levels in the chain of command, that they delegated authority, and they weren't held back by rigid definitions of work and jobs. So it's very easy for an organisation to fill in a tender form and say, yeah, we do all those things. But actually, by taking this approach, we got the chance to see them in action. And the company that won that process, Endava, is a specialist nearshoring company who produce complex banking, financial systems, systems for in regulated environments, as is the environment that we work in, and they floated on the New York Stock Exchange last year, and they had that capacity, thousands of people working in software development that we were looking for in order to spool up quickly, but they also had that human approach where everybody was allocated to working in scrum teams of 8 to 10 people, where we got that kind of human approach. Where were they then? Well, our software development now takes place in Iași, which is in Romania and is a fantastic town, but we'd never been there before. So we became experts on Romanian culture and developed a deep respect for the technical education that you get in software engineering at the university in Iași, which seems to churn out very high quality people. Our organisation now is still distributed, so business leads come from around the world in Unilever. Our design and our development actually takes place in Romania and Bulgaria, with architect leads in the UK and from Unilever and Endava, and business leads coming from around the world. So we're still a very globally distributed project. we scored up to 80 people in development within 3 months. We reached full productivity shortly after. We went live on time to HR in December, and we completed our global rollout of full functionality in April 2019, which is quite an achievement for this kind of work. And I put that down to the ethos of the team. It really does function as a combined team. So the contract isn't referred to on a daily basis. We have a culture, we have myth, we have a foundation myth. We share our war stories, we share our dream. We focus on creative and imaginative input. We have a rule that if somebody asks you for help, you must always help them, and they wouldn't ask you for it if they didn't need it. We got a bunch of things which go on in this project which build that kind of common sense of purpose, which is so important to making, to achieving the maximum output and the maximum amount of discretionary effort, without which we couldn't have fulfilled our, met our objectives. I've got some pictures here of the people who made this happen. We moved the uFlexReward team into a WeWork office in London, and we did the usual. We had combined team meetings in the UK and in Romania. We had an amazing cadence in delivery, and this shows our diary of events. So from September, when we did a soft launch of the new business, through to the reward team, the reward leadership team, Unilever being shown the new product in November, to the go live in December, to Lena Nair, who's the CHRO of Unilever, making a keynote speech at Davos, in which she mentioned the functionality that we're supplying as an enabler for Unilever's vision on the future of work, through to that the grand global go live, which we ran in April. Every month there was a big milestone that this group of people managed to land on. The photo on the left is how the Unilever reward leadership team responded to their first view of the new system. So it's a small team, it's 9 or 10 people, and let's just remember that they spend $6 billion a year. So these are senior people who are challenging. They have a big job to do, and they are very demanding. So we gave them a yes or a no vote, and we had unanimous yeses for go live. And this wasn't an easy team to work with, as I said, demanding people. But what we produced as a result of this joint enterprise went down really well. And the photo on the right is the go live to reward, the reward professionals in Unilever, which we did in the December. And what's interesting about that is we linked everybody up on video, but I think there were only 2 Unilever full-time employees in that distributed team who built the system. Everybody else was not just distributed geographically, but they were distributed organizationally. They were outside the company, but they were totally identified with the mission. And this is just showing how we move through the projects. And if you've worked in IT, big IT projects as long as I have, you will know how impressive that is. To take something as complex as what we produced and then hit these delivery points was emotional. It was great. But it was everybody's success. It was a shared success. And here, just to add a bit more human interest to the story, is the founding day. So I'm shaking hands there with "You Are" on my T-shirt with the CFO of Endava, which was a signing ceremony in which we transferred the contract from Unilever to uFlexReward. And on the left is all the pieces of paper that I had to sign in order to stand up the new company, which we did in July this year. So this slide refers back to the original slide of how we unified a distributed IT workforce. I'm not going to repeat it, but this is the magic formula that really worked. This is something that I would recommend as well, which is how we took the pressure off the team in terms of moving away from fixed price and fixed date and fixed specification delivery. So this is how we moved to using spreads and options-based delivery, which are, they're not hard to do. It's just culturally difficult for big organizations to embark on a journey where they don't know specifically where it's going to and when they're going to arrive and what they need to take with them on the way. Actually, when they do try to define all that, they always get it wrong. So actually what we're doing here is just, we're just recognizing reality. Here's some stats. If you do work on distributed projects, here's some useful stats on, and it's an IT project. This is the awful stats on IT project failure. So a case study built on research from McKinsey and Oxford University on 6,000 IT projects in McKinsey global clients, and it's gruesome reading. So average cost overrun 27%, 75% overrun on delivery by 55%, 17% of what's called black swans, they explode. So cost is over 200% more than predicted. Delays of 70% really can cause you trouble. So that's the norms, and that's what, especially in tech projects, distributed teams have to deal with. That we feel that we found a way of working, of solving. I'm going to wrap up now with a couple of references to the future of work and how that affects distributed workforces. We are ready in Unilever for even more migration of work outside the organization into contracted or contingent work environment. So even more of what we do, including senior professional and technical work, is going to go across the organizational boundary and outside. We know that people want to personalize their reward. They don't just want to take a standard reward. They want to move their reward through their choice across the buckets of pay, bonus, pension, benefits, shares. They want to have more say in how the total amount allocated to them is divided up. We are ready for the fact that the modern work environment is going to be way less hierarchical. Grade structures are going to degrade. People will not be easily put into grade structures as they have been traditionally, and job descriptions are going to change. New jobs arrive, people do blended jobs. The standard, let's pick a job or a profession off a catalogue of the 50,000 jobs there are in the world, that standard is going to evolve as well. So you're going to need to instantly benchmark pay and reward for people in teams as you recruit them to do the work. That is something which we're ready for in Unilever. But the question I'm posing here is our distributed workforce ready for that? Are our partners who supply these really important workers, are they ready to cope with those changes in the way that their employees are rewarded? Within Unilever, we, of course, want to attract, retain, motivate, incentivize the best talent we can. And so we've set that system up there to reflect the way that the labour market is moving. So we're happy that we can do that within the organisation. We can rise to that challenge and that demand. The question here is, are our partners? And that's something that we anticipate will take more interest in as we move forward. And in fact, the system that we work on, the system we produce, does have the facility to extract data so that we can take an interest in how people are paid, their satisfaction with their position, their benchmarking against the markets, just as we would if they were a directly employed Unilever person. And I think that probably brings us to an end here. This is a picture of our team, the wider team in Romania, taken earlier in the year. Who've done a fantastic job for us. And here's a picture of the uFlexReward team based in the UK. That's actually in the Oxford Union, where we went last month for a strategy and planning meeting. And between them, we have this sense of unification. And I think that wraps it up. So thanks for listening, and I hope that you found some things there of use on this topic of how we unify workforces which are distributed across geographies and across organisational boundaries.